fathers, if you are old enough to jump into bed with a woman and create children, please be present for those children. A lot of men are now used to going around town seeding and then letting the women raise those kids. You are creating a population of damaged kids with who will end up with mental health issues. So as fathers, please. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Moments with Nyengeterai. Oh, I'm so excited about what's been happening in the Moments community. Thank you so much for the love, the amount of stories that you're seeing that are changing your lives. Thank you very much. And I'm so happy that at least we are able to make a difference in people's lives. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the phone calls. Even, this last week we had quite a few phone calls from people who were just telling me how certain interviews have changed their lives. So today we have another interesting guest. And I don't know if today will be enough for just one interview. We might need two, because she's a very, very interesting lady who has so many interesting stories. So we already started, before the interview even started, we were already getting into it. Gloria, welcome.
Thank you, Nyengi.
Thank you so much for coming through. I know this has been long going, like we were supposed to start,
yes,
and things happened, but I'm so happy that you made your time to come. And I just want you to introduce yourself to our viewers, who you are, what you're about, and then we'll take it from there.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Gloria Ndoro. Mkombachoto Ndoro is my maiden name, and Mkombachoto is my married name. I use both because I believe that we need to, even after we are married, we need to maintain the links with where we come from, because other people might not necessarily know who you are if you use only one name. But also when you go back into history, you do realize that, like I remember my paternal great-grandmother, that is my father's grandmother. We called her by her name. She was called Vakudzeni. She was Mrs. Mkuruva, but I remember calling her Vakudzeni. She was Kudzeni Chigausiku. So we called her by her first name. Wow. But nowadays you find that people want to hide behind Mrs. So-and-so. You lose your complete identity. And let me tell you something. When you come from families where people have achieved, if they do not know who you are, you miss up on opportunities. So that's part of the introduction. I'm a mother. I am a woman. It's obvious. I'm a woman. I am a sister. I am a daughter. I do not like the word widow, so I'm not going to refer to myself as a widow. I'm a woman who lost her husband in January 2021. I consider myself a professional, an entrepreneur, and a friend to many. And I do a lot of philanthropy work at family level, but also through Rotary, which I joined recently. But over the years, even at university, I remember getting involved in all kinds of philanthropic work. So in a nutshell, that's who I am.
Oh, wow. Welcome, Rotarian Gloria, because I'm a Rotarian as well, actually the ex-president.
All right.
Dawn, yes.
Oh, wonderful.
So welcome, Rotarian Gloria. So our interview is going to be very wholesome, obviously.
Yes.
So I just want to start. Tell me about your childhood. How did you grow up? What were the key lessons from your childhood that you've carried on into your adulthood? That's where I want to start, your childhood.
I had a very happy childhood, and I was raised, when I look at my childhood, I was raised by men. I was the eldest. And being the eldest, I was also the first grandchild to my grandparents, my paternal grandparents, not maternal. So my paternal grandfather was so happy when I was born. He always used to say to me, when I could now hear him, and I was now a bit older, he used to say to me, Gloria, for people to call me grandfather, it's because of your birth. And he used to tell me that you are very, very special. But he was very strict. He was a retired policeman, and he was very disciplined. Wanted to always speak in English. At his farm in Giambe, we used to visit him there. So the men in my life, my father, who I remember very well, and my paternal grandfather, played a huge role in my upbringing. And what I remember distinctly about that upbringing was, at least my father was very honest. Sekuru was about tooling me on things that he was worried I would confront if I marry a traditional man. So it was about, Gloria, I don't want you to suffer when you get married to a man who will throw you in the rural areas. So he taught me how to cut trees and create a field. He taught me all kinds of things around milking cows, killing goats, killing chicken. Like I was telling you earlier, that he's the one who taught me how to cook sadza, actually. He had 5 dogs, and he said, the day my dogs start eating your food is the day that I know that you know how to cook. So on a huge, it was a 3-legged pot, almost the size of this table. On Monday, I started cooking. The dogs looked at the food, looked away. Tuesday, same thing. Wednesday, same thing. They would throw away the food. Thursday, same thing. On Friday, I now knew what to do. That you need to let the sadza simmer for a while. And I did it. When the dogs start eating, it was on holiday. I was 9 years old. My grandfather said, my grandchild can now cook sadza. Please, guys, give me a plate. I want to eat the sadza that has been cooked by my grandchild. So that is the kind of stuff that my grandfather did. But my father was more about direct lessons. You don't do this, you don't do that. I remember when I was at boarding school at Wadilav, we wanted to go to the War of Liberation with some friends, and we were going to meet in Mbare because my father used to take us by car and leave us at school. But on that particular term, the beginning of the term, I said to my dad, no, I want to go to Mbare. I want to go on the bus with everybody else, you name it. And he just looked at me and he said, you think I don't know? You guys have been plotting to go. I know the route that you are going to take. I'm still going to take you to Mbare, but let me tell you something. The guys that you have planned with are going to leave you. They are not going to go with girls because you're going to slow them down. And that's how I did not go. He understood what was happening. He was a member of ZANU, and he was recruiting other people's kids to go to the war. But he did not want his own children to go. And around growing up, he would say things like, don't mess around with boys. If you sleep with dogs, you are going to wake up with fleas. He always had these little tidbits where he would come back home, like say after 11, he would wake us up, we would serve him his food, and that's when he would talk about stories about life. I remember one of the things he said to me. He said to me, "You remember Mrs. So-and-so?" We said, yes. They were family friends. And he said, "I went out with her." He said, "Oh, Baba, why are you telling us that?" Said, "I did." And he said, and then we asked, "Why didn't you marry her?" Because she was a highly accomplished woman, now married. She was married to a medical doctor. And he said, "She was buying me clothes. She was buying me clothes. And you must never buy clothes for your boyfriend. Never buy clothes for a man when you are dating. What are you trying to do?" And my father said, I felt like she wanted to buy me, or it was some sort of a control. And he said, "When I met your mom, she was not trying to prove anything to me. And I knew she was the right candidate." So that was the type of environment I grew up in. The men were very open. The women were they operated, I would say, in the concealment arena. They never wanted to talk about life issues. My mom is a very quiet person. She's talking now a bit when she's older, but she's a quiet person. The aunts did not want to talk much about anything, but I would say that I was raised by the men in my life, and who I am today, how I view life, what influences my thinking is because of the men in my life who raised me. Unfortunately, they are late, but they left legacies within me, thought processes, thinking ways of analyzing situations, ways of hearing things that are not being said in a particular situation or context. And that's what I live with up to this day.
Oh, wow. That is so powerful. And I just want to unpack some things from there. Because especially the issue, you spoke about how the men in your life, the way they raised you, what do you believe that relationship, the father-daughter relationship, the importance of it, and especially in your life, and how it has impacted your life, and how you feel it can impact other people, other kids' lives if the fathers are not present?
It's like church. I've always said that even if people don't want to go to church, the kids in that home don't want to go to church, you need to force kids when they are young to have structure, particularly at weekends on a Sunday. It's important for kids to wake up, to know that we wake up, we eat breakfast, we dress up, and we go to church. Because later on in life, when they are now facing the vagaries of life, one of the coping mechanisms is to go back to default settings, and they'll find their way back. And church will be one of the things that will act as a regulator. Now, let me transport that to a father and daughter relationship. When fathers are present in the lives of all their children, but particularly daughters, one thing I've observed in my life is those daughters make different choices. When a father is open about his own maleness and masculinity, who else is going to tell you about men except your father? The first man you ever loved in your life is your father. In fact, when you start dating unconsciously, the men that you are looking at, you are likening them to your father. So when you don't have that relationship with the men in your life, particularly your father, who is your parent, who gave birth to you, it's going to be a problem. You've got no reference point. You've got no standard on which you are going to assess potential guys who want to date you. You should be able to have a standard that the men in my family are like this because you see them, you engage with them, you spend time with them, you talk with them. Now, In my family, my father was present. My mother was a nursing sister. So she used to go on night duty. And Baba would come home and he would cook. That's why in our family, even with my late husband, we never had workers cook for us, because I come from a reference point where I saw my father cooking. And my mom would have gone for night duty. So Baba would cook, and he liked high foods. He liked to mix nyama and muriwo. And he used to cook sadza. He loved sadza, and he loved a lot of meat, little veg. He would cook. So you would put a plate of sadza there, a plate of his high foods there, and then we would expect to have side plates. And he would say, no, we are all eating from the same plate. And as we are eating, that's the other thing. In my family, we love chili a lot. And my father,
I think he as well. And we got it from my dad.
Yes, that was my father too. So you know what? He used to cook his food with chili. And then he would keep tasting it. Then he would put more chili at the table. And then he would say, but Baba, we can't eat this. This is very hot. And he would say, it's very nice. And from an early age, we started braving chili. But over time, you start to appreciate it and you start to enjoy it. But it was during those eating moments when my mother was away at night duty that Baba saw that as a captive moment, because everybody is focused about food. That's when he would introduce subjects. Today we're going to talk about this. What were you doing at school? But remember, most of us in my family, we went to school, day schooling, I think up until grade 2. It was boarding. Then you come back home. You stay in town. We mainly grew up in Mfakose. It was mainly me and my sister. And then our house was burnt by the Zapu people, because my father was one of those people who was recruiting people from the original Zapu to ZANU. So the Zapu youth did not like it, and they came, attacked us. Then we stayed with Dr. Mazorodze, who was our uncle at Harare Hospital for a while, went to Highfield, 12 pounds, but then eventually my parents ended up in the 5 pound section. And so we always spent a lot of time with Baba, because if Mama wasn't there, Baba was always there. But also, we noticed that their timetables were highly coordinated. When Mama was there, Baba also wasn't. Yes, there were always helpers in the house, and yes, there were always relatives in the house, because a lot of family coming from the rural areas used to come and visit us. And my father, also as the first grandchild on his maternal side, his maternal relatives loved him so much. They had family here in Harare, but they preferred to come to our house. So we grew up in a family where conversations, particularly with the male members of the family, were very open. Nothing was a no-go area. The only areas that my father obviously could not talk to us about was female things, because he wasn't living as a woman. He was living as a man. But for me, it's so crucial that men not only be present in their households, they need to be present to their children. Because a lot of men today, I have observed, they are physically present within the precincts of their homes, but they are emotionally unavailable. So Baba is there, but he's not with you. He's in the house, but he doesn't talk to anybody. Baba is feared. I feared my father to a certain extent, but I knew that he loved us. Of course, all kids are naughty. Like, when we're in Highfield, I used to, run away with my friends and would go to Gwanzura for teen time and come back at about 7, 8, and it's dark. And Baba would say, "Where had you gone to?" and so forth. And I would just look at him and, we were shamboked. Nowadays, kids have got human rights. They don't get shamboked. We were shamboked. But even in the shamboking, and in fact, we grew up in an era where you'd say, go and get your own shambok from the guava tree or from the mulberry tree or whatever. But you knew, even as he was, shamboking you, that there was love. It wasn't abuse. And so whilst it was the strict and narrow upbringing, it was a happy upbringing. If I were to relive my upbringing, I would not change it at all, because I believe that it was wholesome, and what was presented, a very loud, a very larger than life character in my father, and a mother who was very quiet and very reserved. That balance was good for us. At least for me. I don't know about my siblings, but it was good for me. I tend to be more of my father than my mother, because I never keep quiet.
So from that, I want to take parts of it and say, all right, so I see the men were very strong in your upbringing and your childhood. Let's talk now. You're now older. The influence it had, obviously, now on your husband, and how it kind of like molded the kind of marriage or that you had. What can you take me there, and let's go into there. Then also talk to me about how, I know a lot of people now, they always say, people don't really want to get married, or when they do, it's like, oh, let's get married until divorce do us part, just the sacredness of marriage and the covenant. Can we go there now? Taking in all those lessons that you come with from your childhood.
When I started dating to marry, I introduced 2 people to my father. I introduced my husband first, and then we broke up. Then I started dating somebody who actually wasn't even Zimbabwean. And then he visited Zimbabwe, and I took him to my father's office. My father...
Why did you meet someone who was not Zimbabwean?
Because I did my first degree in Swaziland.
Okay.
You see,
All right.
I did my first degree in Swaziland. So they were in exile in Swaziland. He was South African. So he came to visit Zimbabwe, took him to my dad's office, because my father always wanted to know what was happening. And I'll tell you what my father did. I introduced him. This guy was here staying in a hotel for a week, and he would come pick me up from home and then drop me off and so forth. After he had left, my father said, "Gloria, we need to caucus." And I went to his office.
How old were you at this time?
I was 27. No, it was before I had gone to school for my master's. Then he said to me, "Gloria," I think I was around 25. He said, "Gloria, we need to sit down and caucus." We went to his office. There were always drinks. And he said, "What happened to Robert?" And I said, "We broke up." And he said, "Really?" He said, "That guy, I can understand perfectly why you are in love with him. He is tall, he is handsome, he smiles like me, he's got lovely teeth like me." My dad had the most beautiful teeth. He died at 70 with all his teeth intact. And he said, "That guy is a womanizer. That guy, you are not going to be happy with him. All the women are going to be after him, and he's going to be entertaining the women. You better find where Robert is." Robert is going to be your husband because he doesn't exhibit that nonsense. And I said, really? So I went away, did my master's, came back, and then that's when we reconnected with Robert and we got married.
Who looked for who?
You know, he saw me. He saw me one day. He was passing. He was working for the Ministry of Industry and Commerce that time. And he had a friend, a girlfriend that he worked with in the ministry. They were always together. So they were passing in a car and I was waiting for a taxi outside Spaces, opposite Spaces, by which I think it's called Witchford. And then he saw me and he said, he stopped quickly. And he then told his friend who was sitting in front, I knew they were friends from way back when. And he said, go sit at the back. And I said, no, I'm not jumping into your car. I said, I'm not jumping in your car. I'm waiting for a taxi. He said, no, where are you going? And so forth. I was going to Hatfield, to my mom's place. I said, I'm going to Hatfield. He says, no, we will take you to Hatfield. And I said, no, Robert, you guys had a plan. You just happened to see me by the road. So the friend, the girlfriend, her name actually was Joy. Joy then said, no, Gloria, come, we'll take you. So she insisted on me sitting in front and she sat at the back. They took me to Hatfield. The rest is history. But basically, going to your question on marriage, I will not even claim to you, Nyengeterai, that I am sharp around issues relating to marriage. It's my father. Everything that I believe in today, it's my father who told me. And when he was telling me as a young girl, I didn't understand it. But right now, when I'm growing up and I'm getting towards the 3 o'clock and the 4 o'clock of my life, everything he ever said about women, about men, about relationships, about marriage, he was right. I will just share a little bit. When I was a young girl, Baba used to tell me that, Gloria, the world that you live in is very hostile to the girl child. It's very hostile to the girl child. And the people who are at the forefront of that hostility are women themselves. Women are allies of men against other women. And he said to me, Gloria, this world not only is hostile to women, but it's more hostile to single women. And he used to say to me when I was young, and I used to say, what is this guy talking about, you know? And he would say, you have to marry. You need to marry. And Baba was absolutely funny. He would say, Nyango chirema chaicho. Nyango off. He would say, get even a disabled person, even a blind person, because society will find you more acceptable and more palatable when they think you've got a husband at home. Never mind whether this husband is working or not. Never mind whether he is delivering value on the table. He never said, you know, he wasn't encouraging me to go for lower standards. No, he was trying to illustrate the point that society, it's in their DNA, the Zimbabwean society. Just this morning, I went to a lawyer's office in the avenues. And it's a highly reputable law firm. Very professional. The lady who was at reception was professional. So I got there. I just want to illustrate to you in other ways what my father used to say when I was a little girl. So I get in there and she says, who do you want to see? I said, Mrs. So-and-so. Then she said, who should I say is here? And I said, Gloria Ndoro. Remember, I'm very clear. I've said Gloria Ndoro. Then she was calling Mrs. X and trying to locate where she was. And I heard her on the phone saying, the person who wants to see Mrs. X is Mrs. Ndoro. And I started twitching because she's now calling me my father's wife. And then when she finished, I said, when I came here, you asked me who I am. It was deliberate that I did not put any titling in front of my name. My name is Gloria Ndoro, but you are calling me Mrs. Ndoro here. Call me Miss Ndoro or Ms. Because I was going there, Nyengeterai, for legal issues. When I got married and I became Mrs. Mkombachoto, I didn't change my name. There were queues. I went there one day. I saw a long queue and I never went back. But also, I was married to a man who was so comfortable in himself. Whether I was Gloria Ndoro or Gloria Mkombachoto or Gloria Ndoro Mkombachoto, it did not matter. It did not change who I was. So I interrogated this woman and I said, why did you call me Mrs. Ndoro when I never said I was Mrs.? Because here in Zimbabwe, my legal name is Gloria Ndoro. If you go to the registry where we are registered, I'm registered as Gloria Ndoro. But if you check, my marriage certificate is in the system. But I'm not Mrs. Mkombachoto. Nowhere, there is no record in Zimbabwe that says I'm Mrs. Mkombachoto except my marriage certificate. So already, how many years later are we talking about here? Over 40 years later, 45 years later, here is a young woman at reception looking at me, feeling that I need to have titling. And she feels that by giving me the Mrs., it's more respectful. It's hard for her to call me Gloria. Yet I'm calling myself Gloria, but it's hard for her. So that is the socialization you find in Zimbabweans, and it's so deep-rooted, so deep-rooted. That is why I also do not like the titling of widow, because widows are put in a particular category. Somebody said to me the other day, oh, there is a group of widows, would you like to join? And I said, look at me and read my mouth. Do you see me as a person who will get in a collective where we are interacting based on loss and nothing else? I'm not going to join. I can't be in a grouping of people where we are connecting just because we lost our husbands. There has to be something far much more, you know. So you find the society does that to widows. But then again, also in the Bible, the widows are singled out by Jesus, and for caring, not for disdain or whatever, for caring, but they are put on the same level as the disadvantaged kids and so forth. But you see, when people internalize it in their minds, already you are being put at a lower status. But we also forget the context under which the Bible was wrote. During the time the Bible was wrote, women were not working in professional settings. Women stayed at home and did domestic chores, which are equally important. And men were the breadwinners. They still are today. Men still are the breadwinners today. And so you would find that if a husband dies, if there is no son, an adult son in that family, the family can actually go hungry. I saw it in Afghanistan when I was there in 2009 on a UN mission, that the society there and Islam, women are not allowed to work. So your breadwinner is either your father, your husband, or your son. If these three die, you can literally go hungry. So when your husband dies and he's got a brother, you move into their house and you get looked after there. That's the social protection that you get. So I do understand these social dynamics. But my father wanted me to understand that we must not always take the isms that come on a boat, like feminism. I'm not a feminist. I don't believe in feminism, and I'll never be a feminist. Because one thing I have noticed about a lot of women from the Western world, they come holding placards saying A, B, C, D, and at the end of the day, they run back to the soft life in their homes. And it's the Black women who are left with a single parents, with no husbands, with no societal social protections. There is a reason why a man and a woman are supposed to come together and create a family. I do not want to talk about the rights of people nowadays, where people have got freedoms to marry whoever they want from any gender. I'm not going into that space. I am tolerant for as long as it's not in my household. But if it's my household, I sit down with my children and I tell them that already in the world we are Black. We are being discriminated in this world. And you want to go around, for example, doing things because you've got rights, creating further layers of discrimination in your life. It's going to be a tough life, a very tough life for you. And anyway, luckily in my family, my immediate family, we don't have those kinds of issues. Yes, in the extended family, those issues are there. But he was trying to teach me that there are certain things you need to do. There are benefits to those things. Marriage provides companionship. It provides love. But you can't expect your partner to be the one who is going to be delivering happiness to you. You must find happiness within the marriage, just like he must also find happiness within the marriage. You can't say, I can't say, oh, Robert completes me. No, I must complete myself.
Thank you for going there, because people love that.
No, Robert doesn't. Robert never completed me. I completed myself. Robert completed himself within the context of our marriage. Our marriage was, I would say it was a good one, because we allowed ourselves freedoms. Robert liked certain things. We didn't need to like the same things. He liked many things that were different from mine, and I allowed him to. He liked to go out on Wednesdays with the boys, come back home late. I never called him. He was an adult. He knows the way home. Friday, same thing. He knew the way home. I never picked up the phone. I never suspected him of cheating. I don't look after an adult. He knows he made a commitment. He knows the way back home. He knows where he's supposed to sleep. He knows his responsibilities to the family. So when you sit down as in a marriage and you are open about those kinds of conversations, and you ask your partner, what is it that you committed to? This is what I committed to, Everybody knows what they are supposed to be doing. So why are you busy checking somebody else's phone? Why? That's invasion of privacy. You know, my phone would ring in the house, in my bag. Robert would run with the bag and say the phone is ringing. And I would say, why did you bring the bag? Why didn't you answer the phone? He would say, no, it's private space. We respected our private spaces even though we were in a marriage. There is no such thing as knowing somebody 100%. It's a lie. And when you know them 100%, so what? I think what keeps you interested in somebody else is the mystery around Nyengi. There are certain things that you want to discover every day until you die. So why are you getting into her personal space? In a marriage, there is a personal space that must remain sacred. That's my issue. With a lot of young people today, everywhere you read, people are getting into each other's phones. And what we know about life is, if you go up a mountain looking for monkeys and baboons, you're going to find them. So why are you looking for them? But also, why are you so insecure to wanting to be micromanaging somebody else's kids? You see, because the problem is, we think if you meet somebody at 19, it's day one for them. But they had a life. Before you met them, they were socialized differently from you. You think you can change somebody who was socialized away from you? No. You must say, I can live with this. I think we can make a family with this person, but never set out to change another human being. You either take it or you leave it. But also you need to decide on what you are taking. Is it to build, or you are taking it just because you want to be within that institution called a marriage? The marriage set up in Zimbabwe, I want to tell you, Nyengeterai, what I'm observing right now is there's been an erosion of the standard of marriage that people should be committing to. And I do not know what happened, whether it's the food, whether it's globalization or what. But it's very sad that people commit to institutions that they are not even committing to. And it's an institution where you can be so happy. You can be so free. I'll tell you, my type of relationship, I'll just give you a few examples. Like I used to have a friend who lived in Strathaven, and that time we lived in Winsidale. And then it started raining. We were supposed to have gone together with Robert, but he was sick. And I said, Robert, is it okay if I leave you? And he said, no, I don't want to go because I'm not feeling well. I left him at home. Went to Strathaven to have drinks with friends. It was so nice. It started raining. We moved inside, carried on raining until midnight. I wasn't going to be drinking and driving. I phoned him. I said, Robert, I'm not coming back home. I'm sleeping here on the couch. Woke up in the morning. I was not in any rush to go back home. There was leftover food. We carried on braaiing. I got home at 11. That was the kind of relationship we had. Wow. He knew where I was. We were with friends. He knew I was in a safe place. He knew I was up to nothing. I communicated at every level what I was doing. What is wrong with that? He was not going to allow me to drive. I've been drinking, by the way, and he's going to allow me to drive home. And I've been drinking, and it's raining. It doesn't make sense. So every relationship needs to have parameters. It needs to have its own regulators. Don't follow what's happening next door. If you follow what's happening next door, you're going to get lost. Just sit down with your partner. What is it that you want out of the relationship? And deliver what you commit to. And at the end of the day, actually, my father was right. because he's the one who chose Robert for me.
Instead of that other guy. He knew better. Look at that wisdom. But for me, it's like, listening to, oh my gosh, yeah, I have so many things now. I would really want to unpack. But when I'm listening to you, there's so many things like, especially when you're talking about the Institute of Marriage and what's happening now. And you're talking about how you were brought up. I'm just thinking, what do we do now? We have our own kids who are now about to get married. How do you even, I don't know how, what do we do? Because you've obviously socialized your kids in a certain way. They're now going to meet this person. What do we do to make sure that we keep this sacred, this covenant going on with the same value system?
We have to open channels of communication, because remember, when I was growing up, I actually believed that the role of Tete was falling apart. That's what I believe. We hardly had any meaningful conversations with my Tetes. There wasn't. So I can't lie and sit down here and tell you that I had enabling Tetes who actually said, my niece, growing up as a woman, us as the Ndoros, we do things like this, that, and the other. Nada. It never took place. On the men's side, the role of Sekuru also was falling away during my time. I don't recall my three brothers caucusing with my Sekurus, and those are my father's, my mother's brothers. Some of them were not even in the country; they were in exile. So, in the absence of those social structures that used to be in our culture, where you've got your tetes, your aunts or my ninis, your mom's sisters or uncles, your father's brothers, to assist, what do? You have to take the bull by the horns and do it yourself. You have to open those channels of communication. I remember when Robert was still alive, we spoke a lot with our kids. And in fact, when you open channels of communication with your kids, you then understand and as a parent that a one-size-fits-all approach is not applicable. Because when you are meaningfully engaging with your kids, you realize that they are different. They've been raised in the same household to the same parents, but they are chalk and cheese. The way they are looking at the world is different, but also they say that every child is born to a different family in the same household. I was born as the firstborn to adults. I was born in a household where there were two adults. That was my mental model when I got into the world. When my sister Tendai came after me, the first world she saw was of two adults and a child, and she had to fit in. When my brother Shongwe came, there were two daughters and two adults. Windsor, there were already 3 kids there and 2 adults. In the last Bonitai, there were 4 kids. So everybody is joking for space, for survival in a different world, because we are seeing that world differently. But also, as my siblings were being born, my world was changing. The pressures of being called the firstborn. You must set an example.
Yeah.
You are like a co-parent.
Exactly.
And it's hectic. And society just dumps it on you like that. So you have to just sit down and have those uncomfortable conversations. And they are very uncomfortable, particularly with kids of nowadays. They actually tell you that, Mom, you are like this, you are like that, you are like that. And you know what? You are like that. And it's so hard to swallow to be told by a child that you are like that.
Oh, my God. You know what? We have to do a part 2 of this because I can see my producers like, die. So just to close us off, there are 2 things. I want some 5 key lessons from the areas that we spoke about: your relationship with your dad, marriage, and raising children. So some 5 key lessons from that. And then we're going to get into a few fun questions just to close us off.
All right. In terms of family, I believe that, let me actually count them so that I don't go beyond 5. I believe that men and women must marry. Women must marry men. And if you are blessed with children, so be it. If you are not blessed with children, that's not the end of the world. You can adopt. I know that in African settings, it's a challenge, but it's an option. So marriage is very important. But if you choose to marry, I want to talk directly to women. This is a lesson that helped me, which I'm borrowing from the advice from my father. If you are a woman, we might all sit around here and lie and say that we are the same. We are not the same, Nyengi. There are people who are on the same level with you. There are people who will always be below, and there are people who will always be above. And I'm not talking here about money matters and materialism. I'm talking about value system. Sika nemagariro evanu. How do you do things as the Mahakas? How do you do things as the Mkombajotos, right? In my family, my mom would sit on the table with my paternal grandfather. You understand? It was allowed. In other families, they'll say, go to the kitchen. So my second point is, when you're marrying, marry on your level or above. It's easier for a woman to rise up to the top than it is for a man. When you marry a man who's below you, he's going to pull you down to his level. Right? And then to fathers, item number 3, all fathers, if you are old enough to jump into bed with a woman and create children, please be present for those children. A lot of men are now used to going around town seeding and then letting the women raise those kids. You are creating a population of damaged kids with who will end up with mental health issues. So as fathers, please be present, right? And then the other issue I haven't touched on,
we talked about children, family, marriage. Then listen through you.
Okay, then number 4, have an open relationship with your children from the get-go. Your children aren't your friends. You are their parent. You're supposed to lead them. You're supposed to give them direction. But have an open relationship. Communicate. They must feel safe to come to you because you are creating a safe environment for them to learn first-hand knowledge from you. Never allow your children to get vital information from next door or from school. They must get it from you. And then the last point is, please, Zimbabweans, when you go around calling everybody Mrs., you are discriminating against those who were not lucky enough to find partners. I think it's a blessing to get married. It's a blessing, and I would like everybody, particularly the women, to get married. But if they don't, and you are always distinguishing between those who are married and those who aren't, you are doing a disservice to those who were not bestowed that blessing. Just call people by their names. Call them by their names. Don't be wanting to put titles, too many titles in front of people's names. It's I find it patronizing, and I do not think it's enabling for better relations amongst ourselves as society.
That's so true. Those are nice. Those are really nice life lessons. Oh my gosh. So to close us off, some fun questions. What's your favorite color and why?
I love black because it makes me look slim.
That's a fair enough reason. I mean, that's a fair enough reason to love the color. I love that. And your favorite animal and why?
My favorite animal, to be honest with you, I think my favorite animal is a lion because that's my totem. I'm a Shumba. I'm a Shumba. So I love a lion, a cat. Yeah.
Oh, wow. What are you reading currently?
You know, I have been reading academic books. I am not reading anything away from academia because I've pivoted my career. I was in private sector development, strategy, enterprise development, but now I've pivoted into ESG consulting. So I'm reading books on the environment, social, and governance issues. That's what I'm reading.
Wow. You know what I love about what you just said? It just shows that you can change your life at any age. And I think that's a topic for next. We have to discuss that next time. Yeah. If this was your last day on earth and you're about to transition, what is the one thing that you'd be so happy you did? You'd be saying, you know, Mari, I'm ready to come home because I've done what?
In my life, to be honest with you, I think it's my children. I multiplied. I went there and I multiplied. I replaced myself 4 times. Wow. And I'm hoping that those 4 human beings, 3 girls and 1 boy, will go out there and make a difference in other people's lives. Wow. Because even though I gave birth to them, over and above that, I think I've made differences in many people's lives in my work. But I'm hoping these 4 will go and do even far much more than I've done.
Wow, that's powerful. And what is the best movie you've watched of all time?
My best movie? To be honest with you, I've had many good movies, but the one that comes to mind right now is Waiting to Exhale.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that was a good movie. That was good. So we've packed our bags. We have our passports. And we're going to the airport. Where are we flying off to?
Right now, definitely to Morocco.
Wow. Morocco.
I like the art. I like the colors. They are vibrant. I lived in an Islamic country before, and I could have stayed. If I had stayed, I would still be there today. There's something magnetic about their souls, their religion, their culture, their art. And I would like to see what they are doing in Morocco. I've never been there, but it's an Islamic country, and it's my next stop.
Wow, that's powerful. So, Gloria, thank you so much. You have to come back because there's so many things that I still want us to talk about.
Yeah.
So I just want you to just give our viewers one last message as we close off. What is the one message you want to give them as we are closing our interview today?
Essentially, I just want to say, be true to yourself. Keep it very simple. Be authentic. Have integrity in life. Those are the only things that you can control. Don't worry about what other people are doing next door. Focus on your life. The Lord, the Almighty, who gave us this life we are enjoying today, is not a fool. Wait for your turn to do certain things. Don't rush. Don't look next door. Don't compete with anybody. Compete with your own track record. What did I do 5 years ago? What did I do 3 years ago? What do I want to achieve in 6 months, in 4 years, in 10 years? That's what you must do. Do not compete with anybody. That's my message to your viewers.
That's a nice way to close. So to our viewers, as you're going into the week, remember, don't compete with anyone. Stay in your own lane. Be authentic. Just compete with yourself. Have an amazing week, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye.